Your crown has been paid for. Put it on your head and wear it.
Oprah Winfrey didn't enter the world with a silver spoon. She arrived with nothing but struggle. Born on January 29, 1954, in the rural town of Kosciusko, Mississippi, she was the daughter of a teenage maid, Vernita Lee, and a young soldier, Vernon Winfrey, who worked as a barber and coal miner. Her parents were never married. In fact, they barely stayed together long enough to share the same address. From the moment she was born, Oprah's life was marked by instability. Not long after her birth, Oprah was sent to live with her grandmother, Hattie Mae Lee, in an area so poor that indoor plumbing was a luxury. The farm she lived on was no playground. Chores started early, and food was scarce. Oprah later admitted that she wore potato sacks as dresses because that's all they could afford. But even in this hard beginning, one small miracle happened. Her grandmother taught her how to read before she turned 3. That gift, literacy, became her shield. At church, Oprah would recite Bible verses with the confidence of someone far beyond her years. Reading was her escape, her protection, and her identity. But hunger, shame, and emotional neglect continued to weigh on her young shoulders. At 6 years old, Oprah was pulled away from her grandmother's farm and sent north to Milwaukee to live with her mother. What should have been a reunion became another source of trauma. Vernita worked long shifts as a maid and left Oprah with a rotating cast of caregivers. She was shuffled between unstable homes, often left alone or in dangerous environments. Oprah would later say, "I never felt wanted. I never felt safe." Then came the breaking point. At age 14, Oprah became pregnant. The baby boy she carried died shortly after birth, but the emotional toll of that loss would never leave her. It was a moment of unimaginable grief layered on top of everything else she had already endured. With her life spiraling, Vernita sent Oprah to live with her father in Nashville. Oprah would later describe it as both a punishment and a rescue. Her father, Vernon Winfrey, was strict, but he was also the first stable adult in her life. He demanded good grades, set clear rules, and insisted she read a book each week and report on it. That structure became the lifeline Oprah didn't know she needed. And slowly, she began to change. In Nashville, Oprah found order, she found protection, and for the first time, she found purpose. Under Vernon's roof, she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was beginning to dream. What came next was nothing short of a transformation. With structure, discipline, and books in hand, Oprah started to believe she could be something more. While other teenagers worried about prom or homework, Oprah was already working jobs, taking speech classes, and entering contests, not for attention, but to find her voice. And in 1971, at just 17 years old, she entered the Miss Black Tennessee beauty pageant and won. That crown didn't just give her confidence, it opened a door. Not long after, Oprah landed a job at WVOL, a local black radio station in Nashville. She worked part-time, balancing high school and broadcasting, often arriving at the station hungry, tired, and wearing borrowed clothes. But she felt something powerful each time she stepped up to the microphone. "I knew I was meant to do this," she later said. "It wasn't just a job, it was the beginning of everything." After high school, she received a scholarship to Tennessee State University, a historically black college where she studied communications. By the time she was 19, she became the first black female anchor at WLAC-TV in Nashville. It was a historic milestone, but not everyone welcomed her. Producers and news directors told her she was too emotional, too expressive, and too raw. But Oprah wouldn't change who she was. Her natural empathy, often seen as a weakness, would later become her greatest strength. She didn't hide her feelings. She didn't fake her tone. She told the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. That honesty would eventually make her a household name, but for years it nearly cost her everything. In 1976, she moved to Baltimore to co-anchor the evening news at WJZ-TV. Once again, her emotional delivery didn't sit well with traditional news directors, so she was moved off the anchor desk and onto a local talk show called People Are Talking. It seemed like a demotion, but it was actually a breakthrough. Here's where things took a turn. On People Are Talking, Oprah wasn't expected to be stiff or robotic. She could be herself. She laughed with her guests, cried when their stories were heartbreaking, and connected with them in a way that felt real. The audience noticed, ratings climbed. For the first time, television wasn't just about headlines, it was about humanity. But even as she gained momentum, Oprah lived with doubt. "There were nights when I thought maybe this is it," she admitted. "Maybe the world isn't ready for someone like me." Still, she showed up, every day, every interview, learning how to hold space for others while healing parts of herself. Then came the call that would change her life. In 1983, she was offered a job in Chicago to host a low-rated morning talk show called AM Chicago. At the time, the program was dead last in ratings, but Oprah said yes, and that one yes launched a cultural revolution. Oprah's move to Chicago in 1984 wasn't just career growth, it was destiny calling. The station's morning program, AM Chicago, was struggling so badly it was nearly cancelled. Ratings were at the bottom, and no one expected a young, emotional black woman from Baltimore to save it. But that's exactly what she did. Within just a few months, AM Chicago shot from last place to number one in the market. Viewers weren't just watching, they were connecting. Oprah brought something no other host had: authenticity. She didn't wear a mask, she didn't pretend to be flawless, she made people feel seen, and that, more than anything else, turned her into a force. By 1986, everything changed. The show was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show and launched into national syndication. What started as a small local talk show became a cultural powerhouse almost overnight, and with it, Oprah became a household name across the country. She wasn't just hosting a show, she was building a movement. But let's pause for a second, because the pressure was enormous. Running a daily talk show wasn't just about greeting guests and reading cue cards. It was relentless. Every episode needed to land. Every topic had to resonate. Oprah wasn't just seen as a talk show host. People saw her as a therapist, a friend, a moral compass. Behind the scenes, the weight of it all was crushing. Oprah has admitted that many nights she would leave the stage and cry in her dressing room. The emotional toll of carrying the pain and hope of millions of viewers began to wear her down. She wasn't just listening to stories, she was absorbing them. And it wasn't just emotional pain. She also faced constant criticism. Her body, her voice, her emotions, all of it was picked apart by tabloids and media commentators. When her ratings soared, critics accused her of exploiting pain for profit. When she gained weight, the headlines mocked her. When she lost weight, they said she was obsessed with image. No matter what she did, someone always had something to say. Still, she kept going. She kept building. She kept showing up for her audience, even when it meant sacrificing her own privacy. And behind the scenes, Oprah was becoming more than just a media figure. She was turning into a business empire. She launched Harpo Productions, taking full ownership of her brand, her content, and her voice. With Harpo, she wasn't just on screen. She was behind the scenes, producing shows, launching new talent like Dr. Phil and Rachel Ray, and making Hollywood films like The Color Purple and Selma. It wasn't just about fame anymore, it was about control. She'd spent her whole life being told what she couldn't do. Now, for the first time, she was the one making the decisions. By the late 1980s, Oprah wasn't just breaking records, she was changing culture. The Oprah Winfrey Show became more than a talk show. It turned into a ritual for millions of people every day. It wasn't about celebrity gossip or shallow entertainment. People tuned in to feel seen, heard, and understood. Oprah tackled topics no one else would touch: child abuse, addiction, racism, trauma, forgiveness. She gave a voice to people who had none, and while others in the industry followed scripts, Oprah followed emotion. Her gift wasn't just asking questions, it was listening, and that ability turned her stage into a safe space, even when the cameras were rolling. But behind the scenes, it wasn't easy. Oprah has openly said the emotional weight of hosting that show was like carrying other people's lives in your bones. When the lights shut off, she often sat alone in her dressing room, her makeup smudged with tears, wondering how long she could keep doing it. The pressure wasn't just emotional, it was physical. Her body became a constant headline. Tabloids drew red circles around her stomach and arms, mocking her for gaining weight. Late-night comedians made her the punchline. No one seemed to care that the stress of running a media empire while carrying her own personal trauma was eating her from the inside out. But here's the part most people don't know. In 1998, while still at the height of her power, Oprah made a bold decision. She poured years of her life and $80 million of her own money into producing a film adaptation of Beloved, the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Toni Morrison. To Oprah, it wasn't just a movie, it was her soul on screen, a tribute to Black history, a legacy project. The promotion was massive. She used every platform she owned, TV, magazines, interviews, to push the film. But when it finally hit theatres, it flopped. Opening weekend, it was crushed by the horror movie Bride of Chucky. Critics dismissed it, audiences ignored it, and Oprah was devastated. This wasn't just a box office loss, it was personal. She had risked everything, her money, her reputation, her heart, and the world didn't show up. She later said she felt disoriented, depressed, and humiliated. She questioned everything, her voice, her choices, even her purpose. But she didn't let it end there. Even while carrying that pain, she kept moving, she kept producing, she kept hosting, and she kept building a platform for others, even when her own confidence was shattered. The failure of Beloved was one of the most painful chapters of her career, but it revealed something deeper, that even at the top, Oprah was still vulnerable to heartbreak, rejection, and doubt. After the failure of Beloved, Oprah faced a haunting realization. Sometimes, even your deepest passion can leave you broken. The public moved on, but Oprah couldn't. For months, she stayed quiet, retreating inward. Behind closed doors, she questioned whether the dream she had poured her life into had slipped away for good. But while her spirit was shaken, her work never stopped. She continued hosting The Oprah Winfrey Show, producing powerful episodes that changed lives, and lifting others with her platform. Still, the emotional cost of being Oprah was piling up. Every smile on screen came with exhaustion behind the scenes. Then came the longest and most brutal battle of her public life: her own body. For decades, Oprah's weight was a target. The world didn't just watch her, they judged her. Every pound gained or lost made headlines. Tabloids called her lazy, obsessed, unhealthy, even hypocritical. Her body became a battlefield that was constantly under attack. She tried everything: exercise, dieting, food journals, fasts. At one point, she famously wheeled out a wagon of fat on her show to celebrate her weight loss. But instead of admiration, the moment became a meme. Something meant to symbolize discipline ended up haunting her for years. The real pain wasn't about numbers on a scale, it was about feeling constantly reduced. Oprah wasn't just a woman, she was a topic of discussion. Strangers felt entitled to judge what she ate, how she looked, and what her body said about her worth. She later said, "For 25 years, my weight was the most public demon I had to fight, and eventually the fight took its toll, physically. By 2021, her knees had worn down after years of carrying not just her body, but the weight of an entire media empire. The pain became unbearable, walking was difficult, standing for long periods was excruciating. She underwent double knee surgery, a procedure that would be challenging for anyone, but especially for someone whose life had been non-stop for decades. For weeks, Oprah couldn't walk without help. The woman who once commanded rooms with her presence now had to rely on others just to move, but she didn't stay down. As soon as she could, she began walking again, first short steps, then miles. She started climbing hills on weekends, sometimes walking 10 miles in a single day. Each stride wasn't just recovery, it was resistance. Resistance to age, to criticism, to everything that tried to stop her. Then, in 2023, she did something few celebrities would admit. She openly revealed that she had turned to weight loss medication. It wasn't a magic solution. It wasn't a before and after story. It was survival. After decades of fighting a war with her body and the world's judgment, she said enough was enough. Her honesty started a national conversation. Some praised her for being real. Others criticized her for promoting medication. But Oprah didn't care about approval. She cared about truth. And in that moment, she reminded the world that even icons are human. They get tired. They hurt. They need help too. But physical pain wasn't the only thing Oprah had to endure. Loss carved even deeper scars. Throughout her life, the people closest to her were taken one by one, and each death hit her like a wave she couldn't stop. The first crushing blow came in 1989. Her younger brother Jeffrey died from AIDS at just 30 years old. It was a time when the disease wasn't met with compassion. It was met with fear, silence, and shame. Even though Oprah was already one of the most powerful women in media, she couldn't protect him. She later admitted the helplessness crushed her. All my money, all my power, and I still couldn't save him. Then in 2003, tragedy returned. Her half-sister Patricia, who had struggled with addiction for years, died suddenly. But the truth was, Oprah had been losing her long before that. Addiction had slowly erased the sister she once knew. The voice, the laughter, the potential, it all faded, piece by piece. By the time death came, it wasn't just a loss, it was the final blow to a relationship that had already been eaten away by pain and distance. But the most unexpected family shock came in 2010. That year, Oprah discovered she had another half-sister, Patricia Lofton, who had been given up for adoption decades earlier. Oprah had no idea this woman existed. They met for the first time as adults. It should have been a joyful reunion, and in some ways it was. But it also came with a deep ache, the kind of sorrow that only comes from realizing how many birthdays, holidays, and years you missed with someone you should have grown up beside. It wasn't just what she found, it was what she lost. The discovery brought both healing and grief. A missing piece of her life had suddenly appeared, but so had the heavy truth of everything that could never be recovered. Oprah would later describe it as bittersweet beyond words. Then, in 2018, Oprah's mother Vernita Lee passed away. Their relationship had always been complicated. Oprah never forgot the neglect, the abandonment, the pain of being passed from one stranger to the next. And yet, when her mother died, Oprah didn't feel relief. She felt agony, because death shuts every door, even the ones you hoped might open someday. And just 4 years later, in 2022, came the final blow. Oprah's father, Vernon Winfrey, the man who had once saved her life by forcing her into discipline and education, passed away. Losing him was like losing her foundation. He wasn't perfect, he was strict, sometimes cold, but he gave her stability when no one else would. His death, she said, left her hollow in a way I can't describe. Each loss reopened old wounds. A brother, a sister, a mother, a father, gone. And Oprah didn't just grieve their absence. She grieved the pain they carried, the relationships they never fully healed, and the silence that now could never be broken. But here's the powerful part. Oprah didn't let grief destroy her. She carried it. She lived with it. She honoured each person she lost, not by pretending the pain wasn't there, but by using that pain to become more compassionate, more grounded, and more human. In love, Oprah's life followed a path just as complicated and heartbreaking as the rest. Long before she became the most powerful woman in television, she was just a young woman trying to figure out what love looked like in a world that had rarely shown her any. In college during the early 1970s, Oprah fell in love with William Bubba Taylor, her first serious relationship. He gave her the affection and warmth she'd been starved of as a child. For a while, it felt like hope. But life got in the way. They were young, broke, and caught between school, dreams, and reality. Slowly, the relationship unraveled. There was no betrayal, no explosion, just the slow ache of two people growing apart. But the next relationship cut deeper. In the mid-1970s, Oprah dated musician John Tesh, and the two shared a quiet, passionate bond. But their interracial relationship didn't go unnoticed. In a still deeply divided America, they faced cruel judgment. Whispers, stares, and pressure from society pushed them apart, not because they stopped loving each other, but because the outside world made it unbearable. Years later, Oprah admitted that walking away from Tesh left a scar that never fully healed. It wasn't heartbreak, it was surrender to injustice. And then there was Roger Ebert. The legendary film critic had a brief romantic connection with Oprah in the early 1980s. Their time together was short, but it left a lasting impact. Not because of romance, but because of what Roger told her. One night, he urged Oprah to take her Chicago talk show national. That single suggestion became the seed that grew into the Oprah Winfrey Show. Their relationship faded, but that advice changed everything. But one love lasted through it all. In 1986, Oprah met Stedman Graham. At the time, she was already becoming a household name. Stedman, a businessman and author, didn't try to outshine her. He didn't try to control her. He just stood beside her, quietly and consistently. Their relationship survived tabloids, public doubt, and constant questions. In 1992, they announced their engagement, but Oprah later revealed that marriage didn't feel right. She believed it would change their dynamic, maybe even ruin what they had. So, they chose something different, a lifelong partnership without a wedding. They never married, they never had children, but their bond remained. For nearly 4 decades, Stedman has been Oprah's anchor. He never needed the spotlight. He never asked her to be anything less than who she was, and Oprah, in return, gave him the one thing she rarely offered anyone else, her full self, unfiltered and vulnerable. Her decision not to have children was deeply personal. After the trauma of losing her baby at 14, motherhood carried both pain and clarity. Oprah has said, "I wouldn't have been a good mother. I didn't have the patience. She didn't want to bring a child into the world just to prove she could. She chose to love in other ways, through mentorship, education and generosity. Her love life never fit Hollywood's fairy tale mold, and that's what made it real. Quiet, grounded and built on mutual respect, it became a steady flame that burned even as the world around her blazed." Now at 71, Oprah Winfrey lives a life most would call peaceful, but peace came at a high cost. Her home in Montecito, California, stretches across rolling green land, where the wind hums through oak trees and horses trot freely on wide pastures. The estate isn't about showing off wealth, it's about reclaiming what was once denied: safety, stillness, and choice. One of her favourite properties, known as the Promised Land, spans over 40 acres. She walks those fields at dawn, remembering the days when she walked in potato sacks, not designer boots. The girl who once had nothing now owns the land beneath her feet. But these aren't just homes. They are sanctuaries, built not from blueprints, but from scars. Her lifestyle reflects purpose, not just luxury. Her $70 million Gulfstream jet isn't a status symbol, it's independence. A way to move on her own time, without waiting, without explaining. After a life dictated by others, being able to choose when and where to go is freedom. And yet, for all the possessions and power, Oprah still carries what's missing. She has no biological children, no daughter to mirror her smile, no son to carry her name. That absence doesn't haunt her with regret. It lingers in silence. The kind of silence that creeps in at night when the world is quiet and the house is still. But her legacy lives in thousands of others. In 2007, she opened the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for girls in South Africa. It started as a $40 million project, but it became something more, a family. These girls, many from deep poverty, have gone on to attend universities around the world. They call her Mom O, and through them she's lived a kind of motherhood not tied to blood, but to belief. She's also poured her fortune into education and culture. At Morehouse College, she funded scholarships for hundreds of young black men. Many of them became doctors, lawyers, teachers, Oprah men, they call themselves. She gave $12 million to the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture, the largest donation in its history. She gave not for recognition, but because she believes stories deserve a place in the world's memory. And when disaster struck in 2023, she and Dwayne Johnson launched the People's Fund of Maui, distributing nearly $60 million to victims of the wildfires. No speeches, no PR stunts, just action. Because Oprah understands that money means nothing if it doesn't lift someone else. Even in the digital age, her voice still echoes. Her book club continues to shape bestsellers. Her podcast, launched in 2024, reaches millions with conversations about healing, growth, and purpose. She produces films that matter, like the new adaptation of The Color Purple. She appears rarely now, but when she does, it's never for noise. It's for meaning. She once said, "Success is not about what you have, it's about what you share, and by that measure, Oprah Winfrey is one of the richest people on earth. But don't be fooled by the calm. The woman in the wide-brimmed hat walking through her rose garden is the same girl who once wore hand-me-down shoes to a job interview. The same girl who lost a child, who cried alone after the cameras stopped rolling, who had to prove again and again that her voice mattered. And she still carries it all, the hunger, the grief, the scars. But now she carries them not as burdens, but as proof. Proof that a life doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. That tragedy doesn't erase greatness, it shapes it. Even with everything she's built, Oprah Winfrey still walks a tightrope between visibility and solitude. Fame never leaves her completely, even when she retreats from the spotlight. But Oprah has learned how to manage it, not by hiding, but by choosing what matters. She no longer hosts a daily show, but she still shapes conversations. Whether through her own network, her Apple TV Plus projects, or her podcasts, she decides when and how her voice enters the world, and that control is hard-earned. For someone who once had no say over where she slept or who touched her, choosing her words and when to speak them is a quiet victory. She also remains deeply aware of her aging body. At 71, she doesn't try to pretend she's untouched by time. Instead, she leans into it. She talks about menopause, about joint pain, about the mental exhaustion that comes with growing older in front of millions of eyes. There's no filter, no fantasy, just honesty. Still, the world rarely grants aging women the grace it gives aging men. While many celebrate her wisdom, others focus on what's changed: her face, her hair, her weight. But Oprah keeps showing up, undeterred. She knows that her value doesn't lie in her appearance, it lies in her impact. And that truth is her armour. But here's the quiet truth most people miss. Oprah has given away more of herself than we'll ever know. Every story she shared, every person she helped, every tear she wiped away in someone else's life. Those moments took something from her too. Behind every breakthrough episode or viral book club pick, there was a woman carrying more emotional weight than most could ever imagine. She once said, "You can have it all. Just not all at once." And maybe that's the closest thing to peace she's found. A balance between presence and distance, between giving and protecting what's left of herself. In Montecito, the pace is slower, the mornings are quieter, and the voice that once echoed through every living room in America now speaks with more purpose, not less volume. Oprah no longer needs to prove anything. She has earned the right to rest, not because she's tired, but because she's already changed the world. Her story isn't just about tragedy, it's about what rises from it. It's about survival, grace, and dignity, about a girl who once felt invisible and became the most visible woman on the planet. And through every loss, every heartbreak, every setback, she remained true to one mission: to help people feel seen.